Welcome everybody to the Early Education Teacher Development Grant webinar. We are coming to you today on April 14th, 2022. The webinar will run from 3:30 to 4:30, and this webinar is being hosted by the Early Education System Improvement Office in the Early Education Division at the California Department of Education. So we're pleased that you've joined us. Let's start with introductions. My name is Sheila Self, and I'm an education administrator in the Early Education System Improvement Office. And our office is the lead on this grant program. Our lead consultant for the grant is my colleague, Alana Pinsler, who is a child development consultant in our office. Beyond us two, we have an amazing grant support team from our office, as well as the Administration and Fiscal Services Office, which includes Sarah Dodge, Kim Nguyen, Nikki Nakina, and Diana Lua. So looking at our agenda for today, this is a technical assistance webinar to provide you with information that we hope will be helpful as you are completing your applications, and we look forward to receiving them. We're going to do a room check, basic information, fundamental information, the application, award determinations, highlight some key dates, and we also will be taking questions. So you can always put questions in the Q&A, and if time permits, then we will try to do that as well. So for our room check, you can turn on your closed captioning for the webinar. You can ask questions in the Q&A feature, as I mentioned. And again, if we have time at the end, we will try to answer some of those questions out loud. And yes, the webinar is being recorded. And finally, yes, a copy of the slide deck will be posted to the RFA page following this webinar. And so with that, welcome. Glad you're here, and I'll turn it over to my colleague, Alana Pinsler.
Good afternoon, everyone. So excited to see the number of participants growing, especially since we know that spring break has been happening all over California. We appreciate that you're here. Let's start with a brief introduction to the Early Education Teacher Development Grant, or the EETD grant. Next slide. This introduction can be found on page 2 of the overview and instructions document, if you happen to have that already open. So an overview of the grant: there's $100 million in competitive funds available to both increase the number of highly qualified California State preschool program providers and transitional kindergarten program teachers. Also to increase specific competencies for those CSPP, TK, and kindergarten teachers. A little background: while preparing for full universal pre-kindergarten, or UPK, implementation, there's a need to plan for an increase of the number of credentialed and permitted teachers entering the workforce to meet the growing needs, and to increase the professional development opportunities for the current workforce. Next slide. The webpage, I'm sure you've all bookmarked already. The EET grant request for application, or RFA, webpage can be found, and I will be reading this out for accessibility purposes. It's at https://www.cde.ca.gov/FG/FO/RTO/EETDG22RFA.ASP. There you'll find the overview and instructions, which I just mentioned, the SNAP survey link, which is the online platform that you'll be using to submit the application, the budget documents to download, the current assurances and certifications, as well as frequently asked questions. Next slide. As we walk through this grant program and the application, we'll be referring to the document that I've just mentioned a few times already, the overview and instructions document. I'll also refer to it as the O&I document. To access that document, you'll need to go to the RFA webpage, which we just mentioned. I'll ask that Diana put a link in the chat. And when you go there, you can download it. Some of you have already done that. For those visually able, there's a screenshot of the O&I document highlighted as it looks on the RFA webpage on this slide. Next slide. Next, let's review some basic information for the EETD grant. I might have added another E in there. It's a lot of vowels. The information I'm sharing starts on page 4 of the O&I document. The grant period begins from July 1st, 2022 and ends July 30th, 2025. The authorization is from Chapter 2 of Part 6, Division 1 of Title 1, the California Education Code, Article 13.2, commencing at Section 8281.5. And I'll ask that Diana put a link to the statutory link authorization for you there. As for eligibility, eligible local educational agencies, or LEAs, those also include school districts, county offices of education, and charter schools, or a consortium of the aforementioned entities. Next slide. Continuing from page 4 to page 5 for the basic information. Consortium, an LEA they may apply independently or on behalf of a consortium of LEAs or providers within the local area, which includes CSVP and Head Start programs that are operated by a community-based organization, or CBO. If applying as a lead agency, the LEA must remain in the consortium as a lead for the entire project period, act as a fiduciary agent, including compiling and submitting the consortium's fiscal and programmatic information, and collect and submit any data from any other the LEAs or providers in the consortium as required by the CDE. Next slide. On page 9, you'll see a subsection for technical assistance where you can find the following: questions regarding the application, and many of you have already utilized this, can be submitted to the email address of upkworkforcerfa@cde.ca.gov. As it is known, questions of a general theme will be answered. Anything programmatic specific that potentially can give an applicant an unfair advantage will not be answered. I'll also just note that any questions that come into the email box that that are of a general nature will turn into an FAQ that will be posted on the RFA webpage. Next slide. Okay, we went over basic information. Now we'll go over the fundamentals. We're going to begin on page 6. And yes, I'm going to be skipping around a little bit. So this is the administrative indirect cost rule. The LEA must limit total administrative indirect costs to the rate approved by the CDE for the applicable fiscal year in which the funds are spent. For a listing of those indirect cost rates, you can look at the CDE indirect cost rates web page. I'll have Diana put that link in the chat for you. For a consortium, only the lead agency of a consortium can charge indirect costs. We also ask that for out years, you build out any salary increases and changes within that indirect cost. Next slide. We've received a few questions regarding the 2 different appeals processes in this RFA, so I just wanted to pause and share them now and talk a little bit about the differences. So on page 8 is the application checklist screening review. The CDE is going to be reviewing applications for completeness in this part. Applications that are incomplete will be disqualified. All applications not passing the screening process will be notified with the reason of disqualification, and these applications will not move to the Readers' Conference for scoring. Applicants may dispute the disqualification within 5 business days upon the receipt of that notification, and you can send an email to, I'm sure we've all memorized it, upkworkforcerfa@cde.ca.gov. The bigger appeals process, which most folks are recognized, is on page 9. After the Readers' Conference and scoring, applicants will be sent a notification of eligibility or ineligibility. Applicants who wish to appeal their scoring eligibility must submit a letter of appeal no later than 10 business days from that notification. Appeals are limited to addressing how the CD failed to correctly apply the standards for reviewing the application as specified in the RFA. And again, further details of these two processes are within the RFA itself, but this was a question that kind of turned into an FAQ, so that's why we have a slide on it for you today. Next slide. More fundamentals. The allowable cost section can be found on page 6 as well. The funds must be used for the purpose consistent with activities that directly support workforce development and capacity building, including, but not limited to, purposes specified in Ed Code section 8281.5, D6A through H. I'm going to ask Diana to put that Ed Code link in there once again. These grant funds must be used to supplement, not supplant, existing state or workforce development resources. Some allowable costs are tuition, transportation, childcare, substitute teacher pay and stipends, career navigation services, linked courses and cohorts, and training and professional development. Next slide.
Alana, let me
Yes.
just, on the last slide, just note that some agencies may be receiving workforce funding from the Department of Social Services. So we want to just be clear that these are two different funding streams, and so that's why we're highlighting this particular point. Additionally, when we were talking about the indirect cost rate and trying to look at that, it's posted in April, so it does change over time. But if you can either anticipate that or give an average that you're comfortable with, that would be acceptable, as well as any anticipated personnel increases over time. Please build that into the budget because the ability to make revisions is going to be limited.
Thank you very much, Sheila. The next slide we're going to talk about one of the fundamentals of non-allowable costs. So all expenditures must contribute to the activities listed in the RFA and be reasonable, necessary, and within the project proposal described in the application. Some items that aren't allowable: past educational debt, living expenses, program operating costs, consumables, hourly wages or salary increases, legal costs, and puppies. Mostly because you should adopt and not shop, but also, unfortunately, they don't tie into our grant. And good, if you're laughing, you're paying attention. Appreciate that. Now the fun part, the application will begin on page 10. The application, so the required areas for grantees. Each application submitted must include the following: Section 1, applicant information; Section 2, applicant narrative; Section 3, application data; Section 4, application budget; Section 5, allocation priority; and Section 6, application agreement and certification. All applicants must submit one application by May 13, 2022. And yes, that is an extension. We have sent out a mass email through various listservs. The original date was May 6th. We have now extended it. There's a lot of spring break happening, and we want to ensure that you can get all the information that you need. Again, this is going to be submitted via Snap Survey, which is an online platform that CDE uses. Once the application is received, the applicant will automatically receive a notification that their application was submitted successfully. Next slide. Section 1, application information. This starts on page 11. Section 1 is not scored. Do take care, though, in writing the correct information. We have already had some bounce back from email addresses provided in the letter of intent. So there's going to be a question on the survey and a little description of what that response is going to look like. So LEA or lead LEA, please provide the name of the entity. Type of entity applying, you're going to select school district, county office of education, charter school, or consortium. Point of contact and fiscal contact's name, office, telephone number, extension, if they have it, and their email address. This might be the same person, so you might be inserting that name in their information twice. Counties, so select the county of service. or if you're in a consortium, the lead agency's county of service, and then consortium members if applicable. So you're going to insert the name of the entities there. Something to note for this section, if you are listing consortium members, at the present time, there is not a way to list more than 10 on Snap Survey for each entity type. So let's say you have more members to include, please email us. We'll either ask you to send those names in an email body if it's just 1 or 2, or if it's a lot, then we're going to ask you to do it in a spreadsheet. And that is something a little bit beyond our control. We have a wonderful online platform, so we're not wasting paper, but there was a little bit of a limitation. So again, if you are listing consortium members and it's over 10, do send us an email just to let us know. Next slide. We wanted to give you a little bit of a preview of what this looks like. So this is what the Snap Survey looks like. It's, very simple, no fancy rainbow colors. For the first question, for example, are you applying as a solo entity or as a lead for a consortium? So for here, if you're selecting no, that means you're applying as a solo entity and you're not coming in as a consortium. If you say yes, you're applying as a lead agency for a consortium. Next slide. All right, section 2, the application narrative. This begins on page 12. So the application narrative is worth 130 points total. The workforce increases subsection is worth 70, and the professional development subsection is worth 60. Next slide. The following requirements must be adhered to. First is the information in the applicant must be relevant to the program being administered by the applicant. Applicants are also welcome to use their responses that are either in development or developed for their UPK planning and implementation plan to answer anything in this section. The inclusion of false or misleading information can be a cause for disqualification. There's a character limit of 2,500, I always say that wrong, 2,500. 2,500 is another way to say that. And an applicant that is plagiarized in any part in form from another agency's grant, for this grant purpose, application will be rejected. There's 2 items that I want to elevate, the character limit and the 4th point of plagiarism. So first, it's a character limit, not a word limit. A character means words and spaces. So something to note as you're developing the response. Also to note for Snap Survey that while you're typing, the box will not cut you off. So you might be able to write 3,000 characters, but on the receiving end of your application, those last 500 characters will be cut off, and therefore your sentence will be unable to be read. So I'll just repeat that. As you're typing, and this is for accessibility purposes, as you're typing, yes, the limit is 2,500, but the box is not going to cut you off. However, on the receiving end of your application, those last characters will be cut off. If you have any more questions on that, let us know, but we just wanted to let you know in case you see that you're able to actually type a little bit farther. Second, that last requirement was written to deter applicants from simply just copying and pasting from another grant application, which we've seen at CDE recently, without actually any sort of attempt to tailor that application to the particular needs of the LEA or the consortium. And we do recognize that there's only so many ways to say, we're going to go out to the field and recruit teachers, and that some parts of an application is going to be very similar to another part of an application, particularly if there are several applicants that have the same grant writer. We totally recognize that. The CDE expects of the applicant just to be reflective of the uniqueness of the LEA and the consortia that is submitting that application. What's needed and happening in your area is going to be different than the needs of another area, other than there's a workforce shortage across California. That is a recognizable space. And also, again, you are welcome to plagiarize your own work. There is work being done on your own UPK template. Feel free to put that in here. You don't need to do another assignment. It was the word that I heard last fall, a plandemic. We hear that and we recognize that. Next slide. For the application narrative, questions 1 and 2 relate to workforce. Question 1 is describe in detail the LEA or consortium's plan to increase the number of credentialed teachers who meet the requirements for teaching TK. This plan should also describe answers to those sub-questions A through D. Question 2, describe in detail the LEA or consortium's plan to increase the number of highly qualified teachers to teach in a CSPP. This plan should also describe answers to sub-questions A through D. Next slide. Questions 3 and 4 relate to professional development. Question 3, describe in detail the LEA or consortium's plan to increase the competencies for CSPP, TK, and KA teachers in the following areas that are listed in A through F. Question 4 is describe in detail the LEA or consortium's plans and needs for each of the following items listed in A through F. Again, all these questions have a 2,500 character limit. Next slide. Now we'll move on to section 3, the application data, which it begins on page 14. Section 3, the application data. This section is worth 20 points total. The first part is provide data for the LEA or consortium using 2021-22 school year data to support the written narrative plans that were provided in section 2. This data provided will not be scored or monitored. Part 2 is where the points are. On the SNAP survey, you'll check the boxes of, did you ensure that the written prompts linked to the data provided for your CSPP section? And next, did you ensure that the written prompts linked in your data provided in the TK data section? This area is to ensure that the data that you're giving us is also just being mirrored into your written plans. Next slide. Section 4, the application budget, that can be found on page 15. Both of these budget documents can be found on the RFA webpage, and this section is worth 15 points. This one's also in 2 parts. The proposed budget narrative, this is required and it's worth 15 points, provides sufficient detail for each identified cost associated with implementing the proposed goals and activities. And when scored by the reader, the CDE can review that budget for completion and cost effectiveness. Part 2 is the proposed budget summary. It's required, but not scored. Once again, the grant program period is from July 1st, 2022 to June 30th, 2025. And applicants must provide totals for each object code and should align with that proposed budget detail. Next slide. Section 5, allocation priority. This section can be found on page 17. The allocation priority. The applicants are only scored on section 5 if they meet a threshold qualified score of 115 points out of 165 total points on sections 2 through 4, which is 70% of the total score. Next slide. Section 5, the allocation priority. This section is worth 70 points and is non-cumulative. If an applicant meets the required minimum score, CDE will score this section. Everyone starts at 0 and then there's 70 points maximum. For an applicant to be scored in section 5, first they pass the applicant screening checklist. Their sections 2 through 4 meet the threshold of 70%, which is 115 points out of 165 total. And then also after all notification of eligibility has been heard. All applicants begin section 5 at 0. Next slide. Instructions for this section. Describe the student population for the LEA or consortium intends to serve using the 21-22 fiscal data, unless otherwise noted. This also includes children that are currently being served and numbers of children who are planning to be served in full-day CSPP, TK, or K programs offered by LEAs or CBOs. The why. The goal of this section is to elevate the statutorily targeted student population need alongside the LEA workforce need as required by Ed Code section 8281.5, 5D. Next slide. There are 2 allocation priority questions where you will respond with either a yes or a no. The extent to which the LEA or consortium is located in a county that has more than 3 young children, 3 to 5 years of age, inclusive for every childcare slot. And does the LEA or consortium operate in an attendance area where a significant disproportion of particular races or ethnicities, as described in section 1418D of Title 20 of the United States Code, has been identified in special education? Next slide. There are 5 allocation priority questions where you're going to provide a percentage. A percentage of children that will be served in the 21-22 school year by the following ages, 3, 4, and 5. A percentage of children who are eligible for FRPM, or that's free reduced price meals, in TK and K for the 2019-20 school year. Percentage of children who have a dual language status in TK and K for the 19-20 school year. A percentage of 3, 4, and 5-year-old children with disabilities as defined by either having an individualized education program, IEP, or an individualized family service plan, IFSP, and that's for the 21-22 school year. Last, the percentage of children that will be served by the following program types: CSPP Part Day and Full Day, TK Part Day and Full Day, K Part Day and Full Day. That's also for year 21-22. I didn't even need to say next slide. And now the hardest section of all, the section 6, the application agreement and certification. Woo, I need to get a drink of water. Next slide. The applicant will be prompted in this section via SNAP survey to sign the application electronically and certify that the information provided in the application is correct and complete. Now let's move back a bit in our O&I document back to page 8 to discuss award determinations. The funding may only be awarded to applications that have passed all required sections and which meet a threshold qualified score of 115 out of 165 total points on sections 2 through 4, which is 70% of the total score. All applicants will receive a notice of eligibility informing the applicant of whether or not that application met that minimum score necessary to be eligible for funding, and then will be provided opportunities to submit an appeal. Following any appeals, applicants that have been determined to meet the threshold qualified score will be scored on allocation priority points in section 5. Within each county's allocation, and you can find that on Appendix C in the O&I, also on page 43, funding will then be awarded to applicants in rank order of the total score on section 5 until funding in that county is expended. If there is additional funding remaining in the county's allocation after all eligible applicants have been funded, or a county either did not submit an eligible LOI in time or did not have an eligible application, the funds unspent will be collected and proportionally redistributed to counties that have run out of funding to award to all qualified applicants. Next slide. Award determinations and accountability. Ongoing communication with the CDE is an integral part of those reporting requirements for grantees. The grantees must participate in an orientation meeting and at least one meeting for each grant year to be convened by the CDE. And we may provide opportunities for technical assistance during those additional meetings. Additionally, the following regular reporting must be completed and submitted for each grantee: a semi-annual fiscal activity report, an annual narrative progress report that includes a description of accomplishments and challenges, identified resources, effective practices, and next steps to be developed, and an annual program reporting including data on the implementation of the goals and activities described in the proposed plan. A timeline can be found on page 6. However, we'll just be highlighting a few key dates for you now. Applications are due on May 13th. Again, that's an extension. We'll be having that first review, the application screening checklist from the 13th to the 20th. The notice of ineligibility will be sent on the 20th, and after receiving, applicants will have 5 days to submit an appeal on that. On May 31st, the notification of eligibility of scoring will be sent, and appeals are due 10 days after that notification. Final funding awards will be posted June 20th, and all dates mentioned within this webinar and on the RFA and on the RFA webpage are subject to change, and we will definitely communicate if any of those dates have changed. And now questions and answers. I have not been looking at the question and answer sheet because it's all been over there. So I apologize if you were asking something in the middle of me saying something, but I wanted to make sure to get all this information out first. So Sheila, it looks like you've been reading the Q&A. Is there some things that you would like to elevate at this time?
Yeah, I think, one question that's kind of commonly coming up and is about the number of consortium members that they can submit. We have that limitation of 10. And so once again, if you have more than 10, then you can submit that, name, contact information for those consortium agencies that are going in with you on an Excel spreadsheet or a Word table, whichever kind of fits in terms of the number of folks you're trying to add. I would say kind of a rule of thumb, if it was just 5, I'd probably go into a Word document and do it. If it was 50, then I would go use an Excel spreadsheet. So yeah. Let's see. There is some question about the fluctuation of indirect cost and personnel cost, which I know can be kind of a challenge to anticipate that. But once again, as I mentioned before, if you can look and see if you have kind of a consistent indirect cost posted on the CDE website, go within that range, average if it's fluctuated, and just do the best that you can do in regard to that. We want you to get that cost to support the project. And again, with personnel, if you have kind of a typical salary schedule that is implemented and updated each year, just try to factor that in as well.
Okay. There's also that some were thinking about a COE or a County Office of Education, that they're also districts. So the eligibility is for local educational agencies, which include a school district or a county office of ed or a charter school. So a COE and a school district is not the same thing, although I think in smaller rural areas, there might be probably on the same plot of land.
Yep. There was a question about whether IHEs can apply. And once again, that's not permissible. We know that there are some wonderful preschool programs that are located and co-located at universities. So I would just suggest find out within your county, and the information is all posted on the CDE website for the funding proposals, and see who is applying and see if a consortium that would be inclusive of your work could be included as well.
Okay. It also looks like there are some questions about putting in attachments. At this time, our SNAP survey was not developed to put any supporting attachments in there. We, as I mentioned the word earlier, plandemic, we were trying to make this as simple as possible versus asking you for a lot of supporting documents to attach onto this RFA. If there's something that you'd like to reach out to us about, you can, but at the time there's nothing as the RFA has been developed and the SNAP survey has been developed, the only attaching would be the budgets.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Sheila, what's another question that you see in there?
Great. Sarah says, if we have 33 CSPP programs in our county, do all 33 organizations need to be part of our consortium to be able to have their teachers benefit from the grant-funded services? That is very much your call in terms of who you want to include in your application. So it could be inclusive of all 33 organizations, or you may take a more targeted approach and look for folks that are ready to engage in this work. So that's very much a local decision. That's on you. Let's see. Oh, another one to clarify on the characters. Does it include spaces? Yes, it does. So it is characters and spaces are all included in that 2,500 character limit, not words. So that's a great question. And once again, asking about 2,500. So that's 2,500 characters, as we just mentioned. You should get when you go over that, it should start looking red in your response, and that will cue you into, oh, I'm starting to go over, and then you can start wordsmithing to get all of the essential information into. We wanted to make it really simple, accessible, not to occupy hours and hours of time. So hopefully we have partially met that goal, but that's the character limit.
I have a few that I see. So one was a LEA can partner with a CBO that operates a CSPP. And yes, that is actually called out in statute to do so. And then secondarily, there's been a few folks asking, if I didn't submit an LOI or a letter of intent, does that mean that I cannot apply? And yes, that does mean that you cannot apply, unfortunately. However, there is a listing of those LEAs who did submit an eligible LOI on the RFA webpage. And so we have encouraged that those who perhaps weren't able to get their LOI in to see about, what is someone been saying? Arranged marriaging and joining in on a consortium. Or maybe it's not arranged marriage. Maybe it's just a community group project. It's a better allocation.
So Alana, we have an interesting question. Can a district submit 2 applications, one for early childhood and one for TK program? We did submit 2 different letters of intent and appear twice on the master list, Baldwin Park Unified School District. So we are accepting 1 application that would be inclusive of all of the teacher development activities that you'll be providing. If you submit 2, 1 would have to be disqualified. So we're accepting 1 as the lead agency. If you have additional membership and activities, I would also say in terms of the department's approach to the work, in that second bullet, it talks about being able to do professional development across early childhood, transitional kindergarten, and kindergarten. So one purpose of this is to start that collaboration process. We know that that's we're trying to start to meld and mold our new universal TK program into our preschool to grade 3 initiative. We would love to have more collaboration across those grades. So please submit 1 application, and you can speak to both pieces in terms of teacher development and recruitment activities and collaboration across those different grade bands.
So I see in the chat here, and this is a continuation of the more than 10 partners listed in the consortium, about if there could be a space of putting like an attach it on there. You know, while we were developing the SNAP survey, you know, we were pressed with limitations on it. And so that's something that we could take back to the team. But as the RFA is currently live, we're going to go with how the RFA is currently live and not try and confuse anybody by taking it out and then reinserting where we might be able to put an attaching. it is a system that's probably older than me, I will have to say. So make of that what you will. So at the moment, this is our workaround, and we know that a workaround is not as kind as having something that's a little bit more available. So we will take that back in order to talk to our technology services division and their team. However, we probably won't be changing that for this RFA at the time. Let's see, anything that's pressing for you right now, Sheila?
Yeah, there's a question about if we are planning to serve all CSPP and TK teachers in our county, would we list all district CSPP contractors in our county as a consortium member? No one else in our county is applying. So yes, we really do want to get an understanding of the scope of the work that you're doing, who you are including and targeting for increasing the teacher pipeline and collaboration activities. The IHE that you may be developing a relationship with. We want to make sure that to include the institution of higher education, community college, if that is a partner of yours that you will be working with. So hopefully that answers that question. Once again, you're not required to have everyone included. That's at your discretion, and you can determine that readiness.
I also just want to elevate that something else we've been working on with TSC is that some folks have been having issues with the O&I. I think in the chat and as several other folks on this webinar and participants have been very kind enough of saying, if you have changed it to inserting a www in the front, and we sincerely apologize that it's not just absolutely clickable, and that is something that we've elevated to our TSC.
Okay. Let's see, another question. So the grading rubric states that we must include very detailed plans for each sub-question. How do we do this with such limited character count and space? It really only allows 1 or 2 sentences per question. So once again, we have had a lot of feedback on the RFA. And one of the pieces that was really elevated to us is accessibility, not having it be an administrative burden. And so be as detailed as you can within the confines of the SNAP survey and application itself. So it's kind of a happy medium, we hope. And I know we'll be hearing more, and we always look to continuously improve our processes. So we're open to receiving that feedback as well. So I'm going to skip over more questions around the 2,500 spaces letter. So we've gone through the character count a couple of times. So another question, can an early childhood child care center, under CSPP with TK age children apply for this grant? Folks who can apply for this grant would have submitted the required letter of intent or interest that was previously a requirement in order to apply for this funding. So whichever agency, whether it is a LEA or a County Office of Education or charter, that would be who would be eligible to apply if they had submitted a letter of intent.
There are folks asking to see if we can find out if the district applied or who applied on that LOI. You can see that on the RFA webpage. And if you click on the first, perhaps it's the second tab, it's an Excel spreadsheet kind of under the LOI row, it'll be attachment 2, and then you'll be able to see who submitted an eligible application.
I think this is a good question too. Is it each question that has 2,500 character limit, or is it the whole narrative? It is each question. And Alana, can you speak to that more directly, maybe?
Yes. I mean, yes, that would be very short if all 4 questions had to be met under a 2,500 word limit. So apologies if there was any sort of confusion on that. It's each question. So there's the 4 questions and each is 2,500.
Okay. Another question that's come in: will funds be allowed to be encumbered to fund completion of an activity that may be extended beyond the last day of the grant, such as completing a degree in the semester following? I think that that's one that we will want to take back and provide a FAQ on. We understand that the period may extend beyond the final date of the grant in order to encumber funds, but rather than speaking off the top of my head, we'll come back with information on that.
I do see a few questions about alternative certification options having to do with TK teachers. So there is sort of an other. We were trying to capture a TK teacher that's certified that has the 24 units, a TK teacher that's certified but doesn't have the 24 units yet, and then also there's the preliminary, which kind of encompasses like district intern and things of that sort, and trying to encompass all those other alternatives. If there is something, there's also another box that's just sort of other. So hoping that that meets, because the idea is to get a data on what the TK teacher workforce looks like currently and what it will look like at the end of the grant project.
Quick question: is a county office of education considered a consortium? In this particular instance, it is not. It is an entity, agency that can apply for the funding.
There's a few folks asking for us to put the LOI list in the chat. We are unable to just share an Excel sheet, which is why we keep asking you to go to that website and then you can click on it and then you can download it. I know that's a few extra clicks. We would love to be a full service customer service agency right now, but we're unable to do that.
So another question is, what constitutes significant as it relates to significant disproportionality of particular races, ethnicities for special ed? So this data on DisPro and SIGDisc, LEAs report that to the California Department of Education. That information is what you report, so you should have access to the information. It may be in a different office or division of your organization. It is also, I believe, posted on the CDE website on the special education in the special education division area.
I'm just looking at the time and we're coming close upon the hour. I just want to elevate that there are a lot of questions that are open. We are going to be taking everything back, and those that are synthesized and aren't specific programming will go on our FAQ page, which is on that the RFA page. So do not worry if it's not answered right at this moment. We're also just really, again, happy that you're here and happy that you're elevating some thoughts that you're having.
Alana, another great question is, for the percentage of 3, 4, or 5-year-olds, is this based on census data or another point in time?
Should be based on census data. In the RFA itself, there's also sort of a little asterisk caveat of how to figure out data pieces. We were working with statutory language. I'm not putting the blame, it is more we didn't write it. we do need to elevate it and share it and work with it. There can also, so there is some space in the RFA there. That sort of gives a caveat of like how to figure some things out. I personally am not a math person, so I'm with you. If there's any other questions on that, you can also send it in an email to us, and perhaps we can also elevate that from the RFA and put it on the FAQ page.
Perfect.
So Sheila, while you're looking for another question, I'll also just say that we do have a slide that's about resources, although it would take us probably, it's okay, you don't have to go to it, Kim. It would take us about 15 minutes to read all of that out, and I know you don't need to hear us reading that. What's going to happen is at the end of this, you will get an email after you've attended, and including through the various listservs, to also talk about some different resources that you can do. So that is also coming, but we'll just we'll spend the last few minutes just doing Q&A instead.
Are there any resources we need to elevate at this time, or we'll just put those out in written form?
I think we put it out in written form.
Okay.
Some folks are really good at like auditory, but some folks really need to see it. So we also want to make sure that you're aware of all of the funding opportunities that are also coming out from our sister agency, the California Commission for Teacher Credentialing. We've been so pleased to be able to work with them, and they are so thoughtful in their approach. We have created jointly a compendium that lists all of the funding opportunities available so that you can mix and match. If you want to focus on a teacher residency program, that's through CTC, or apprenticeship. They have a lot of different Golden State teacher grant program. They have a lot of different opportunities, and we want you to avail yourself of everything that will work for you within your context so that we can address the teacher shortage and our need for teachers as we implement universal TK. Oh, there's a question here. Might funds allocated in the county be split between various applications, or will the fund request be given to each applicant in rank order until funding is exhausted? So I'm not sure if the question is, can we split across counties? That would not be the intent of this RFA. Allocations have been designed on a county by county basis. And so we would want county funding to remain within those confines. The exception to that is just developing those partnerships if you happen to not have an institution of higher education within your county, and not all do, to be able to network with either in-person, online training. We will be once we score the application, we will be ranking them based on the legislative requirements for need, and then we will award funding until the county funding is exhausted. So that will be the approach that we'll take on that. There's a few questions about how the county allocations were determined. That's pulled from statute, and then we had somebody who's better at math than we are. That is their job, is to work on data. That is under the same statute, under 4A. Oh goodness, I just had it. Under section 3, and then the subsections under 3. So that's how the counties were, allocations were determined. There's a question about for private institutions for applying. Unfortunately, no, it's just for eligible LEAs, which are charter schools, county office of education, and school districts. Estimation on when FAQs will be posted. As quick as my fingers can type and as quick as our web posting can happen. If you've worked with CDE for a while, you will know that we run by really great and wonderful accessibility rules. So sometimes it will take a bit for things to get posted because we want to make sure that folks with all abilities are able to read and comprehend and understand what we're posting.
So we have a question here about, is there a way to be given an old sample template of grants that have been awarded with the scores of that 70 or higher to see and review types of details you're looking for? Unfortunately, we do not have that resource available. We have the information in our request for applications. And so all of the information is contained within that document. So
this is the first time this grant has gone out, so we won't have any example documents until we receive your application. So we've got some thank you replies as well. So a shout out to Kim, Diana, and Sarah, who are behind the scenes doing typing as quick as they can.
There's a question about clarifying a question that was previously asked regarding CSPP teacher definition. So for CSPP, the requirement is to have a teacher permit. And once again, any staff member within that context and within those programs, we want to ensure that they are accessing the resources, tuition supports, so that they can advance. So any level of permit, teacher permit, as it's asked in this question, would be allowable. I think there's another, once again, a CTC grant that also allows for classified staff to start in a teacher preparation program. So I just want to acknowledge there's a lot of questions about how to calculate the percentage, and is that related to 3 to 5 year olds or census or et cetera. So we will come through these questions and respond to that so we can be clear about how to go about that calculation. Look forward to our FAQs that are going to be coming out. Once again, there are some questions from this point on that are going to be very specific to your particular program. And in order to, since this is competitive, we want to make sure that we are giving kind of global answers that are responding to the thematics, but we won't be able to respond to very specific questions that may come up that is very specific to your context. And with that, I think we're closing in on time. I really want to appreciate everyone's engagement and participation. Love the questions coming in, and I'll let the last word come from Alana.
Thank you all so much. As I will just tie in with Sheila, is that you can, again, send us as many questions. If it's specific to your program, we probably will not answer it, as that might give you a leg up. However, seeing some of the data questions, we did put that in the RFA of how to calculate, but we were happy to also write it in a different way of how to calculate. These were, again, things that are pulled from statute, and you know, maybe we should all talk to the legislature and say this is how we should work on our data pieces, right? So appreciate that, and I know the questions are about the percentage as well. Everything is a public data space, so there's that's something I'll just end on. We will be posting FAQs. We will posting them as soon as possible. Feel free to continue to keep in contact with us and email upkworkforcerfa@cde.ca.gov. And thank you very much for being here.
Thank you so much, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and enjoy the weekend that's coming up.
Yes, happy Friday, Junior.